All right, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise the awareness of trauma and to support and inspire new trauma therapists just starting out on the trauma-informed journey. I do that with my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0, my online courses and workshops, and the Trauma Therapist newsletter. If you're a therapist of any kind and you work with individuals who've been impacted by trauma, I invite you to head on over to my website at thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. All right, let's get started. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. Today, very excited to have as my guests Fellonte Misher and Dr. Sangeeta Prasad. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so let me just read your bios and then we'll get going here. Dr. Sangeeta Prasad is a psychologist who engages in long-term family work in a mixed income practice. She's an adjunct professor at the George Washington University's Human Services and Social Justice Program. Her areas of experience include early intervention to prevent the continuation of transgenerational trauma in families, addressing racism in clinical practice and in dialogue spaces, and cultural training focused on adapting psychological practice to meet the actual needs of minority communities. Fellonte has supported young men in his community to consider life outside of gangs for many years. She's a third grade teacher at Tubman Elementary School and is an athlete who's dedicated to physical health and reflection. Fellonte is a Washington, D.C. native who spent 4 years playing collegiate football at Old Dominion University and then went on to play professionally in Italy and Poland. Through In the Streets, the organization that was co-founded by the both of them, he will continue to interrupt the community norms that dissuade young Black men from believing that college is a possibility. His goal is to make the young people in his community feel a sense of opportunity to build their life somewhere other than the streets. All right, welcome. A mouthful there. So, Fellonte, I as I was saying before, I came across you through an article in the Washington Post, and man, I was just so inspired. I was like, I've got to have this guy on. This is what this podcast is about. What the heck you and both of you are doing. This is so inspiring to me. So let's just start. How did this get going? And we're talking about In the Streets, right? This foundation, this organization that you both founded.
Yes. So In the Streets kind of like, so I met Sangeeta Prasad through a program called Kindred. So a few years ago, I was a assistant teacher in a pre-K special education class. And, I was looking for, I actually joined, the school to work in the building to work with different families in my community. But that special education class, I was basically with my 8 students the whole day. And so Sangeeta and her organization, Kindred, brought a program to the school to basically have dialogue session about like the inequities in the school buildings and, trying to have better, resources for the families that come. So I was like, okay, I want to join that to, better outreach to my families. So through those dialogue sessions, I was a part of it, and Sangeeta, she facilitated it. And I guess through our interactions in that first group, she kind of saw something in me and wanted me to facilitate the groups the next year. Okay. So that next school year, we did the same dialogue session. She kind of mentored me from the side, and then I went into the meetings and facilitated those school-based inequity conversations and racial inequity conversations through with other teachers, school psychologists, school social workers, and things like that. After that, my position.
Hang on. Let me just pause you there for a second. So you said you had this interest in. You said you were a teacher, a special ed teacher, working with. How did you start in this interest in this field in the first place?
Well,
because how old are you?
I'm 27.
All right. So when you started this, you were how old?
24.
Okay.
23.
however you slice it, that's pretty young to be doing that. But it's awesome. But what inspired you to do that?
Like, so I've always felt like I was like, one of the leaders of my community. And then I like, when I came home from college, in 2016, 2017. And literally I just seen like folks that I grew up with from like little kids become like, drug abusers and like get sent to jail for countless of years, like they're never coming home. And like, these are folks that like, I literally was in, like, I can show you like my elementary school picture, and they're there. And like, right. They just went, I came home to like, such crazy conditions with my folks. And at the time, my only position I could get was a construction worker. So I worked, manual labor for about 2 years. And I just walked into the community and just like, I have to figure out a way to like put my hand in this some way. And so I felt like I was able to get because my degree was in therapeutic recreation from college. So I was hoping that I can get a position in the school, then I can work with the families in the school, and maybe we can, get those kids at a good age where we can kind of develop them. But when I got into the school, that special education class was literally strict. I had 8 students, and I was like, those are my 8 students I focus on from the time I get in to the time I leave. And, just like the community and what I came home to once I came from college, like I just felt a need to like try to do something about it.
Awesome. Awesome. Go ahead, Sangeeta. Yes, please.
I'm just going to plug Fellonte, but Fellonte has a really amazing heart. And when I met Fellonte, he was working full-time in an enclosed classroom with no behavioral referrals for those children, which is remarkable. As an early interventionist, that is extremely rare in classrooms, to not have young children from traumatized community punished, suspended, expelled regularly. Fellonte did that, and then he would work a second job, given what assistant teachers are paid, and then afterwards would go into the community and work with young people like 4 or 5 years younger than him, maybe 3 or 4 years younger than him, to try and kind of do exactly what he was saying. And so I just wanted to add that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So obviously the Superman cape is hidden under your shirt, Fellonte, right? Let's bring it out. Show it. Seriously. Come on. Let me ask you something. You talked a lot about your friends and going down these, I mean, it almost sounds cliche, going down, becoming drug abusers, getting sent to prison. How come that wasn't you?
It's funny because like, I always have this thought, like having guidance or not having guidance, which is really better. I grew up and, a lot of my family members took those routes. And, I was the one that was like, I really don't want that to happen to me. And I really don't want to, so a lot of folks would say like, I just kind of just seen what I didn't want to get myself into. And I was able to see like the repercussions of like some of the actions that people see further down the line. I was able to see that early, with like just my uncles and like my cousins that are a little older than me. And they, kind of made a decision that seemed cool at the time, but then I seen the repercussions behind it. I'm just like, I don't actually want to do that.
So a lot of times when people have discussions like this, they point to like a mentor in your life. Was there like that figure in your life who guided you or directed you or set you straight?
So I would say maybe further once I got into high school, but like growing up, really, like, I was really a loner in a sense. Like I really didn't have much friends because, basically being from DC, it's not like a gang. So like when you say distract you from gangs, it's not like a gang that you join. Like wherever you're born at and raised at, that's the gang you're a part of. So regardless of you involve yourself or not, as long as you were raised there, as long as you grow up there, you are part of it from the people that are opposite to you. So, when you engage in those activities, like that's when those crazy repercussions, like going to jail and, getting caught up in the different things happen. So like the fact that I didn't engage in those activities as much as other people made me like stand alone in some senses. So I would like usually be by myself, right. And I would, usually not have, really too many close friends.
Awesome. Awesome. So
So,
let's bring you in here, Sangeeta. So you were what in an advisory role with Fellonte, or what was your
So
position
I
initially?
facilitated the first group. It was a race and equity group. And this was maybe the 7th or 8th school I'd done this at through a different organization. And I was senior advisor at that organization. But in part, I saw in Fellonte and in Latoya, our other co-founder, they would, that group of people, what the two of them said, because they had the lived experience in the community and were able to communicate that, would shift the mood of the group, would shift the focus to where it needed to be. And it is so rare that the Fellontes and Latoyas of the world run the organizations that actually address trauma. And so over time, I helped Fellonte train to become the race and equity facilitator along with 2 of his colleagues the following year. And then I just got tired of leaving places. Some of my patients I've seen from age 2 to age 13 now. And so I don't like how with trauma, sometimes you have a 3-year band or a 2-year band or something short and then you leave because disappearance is such a fundamental part of the psyche of people who are oppressed. And so to again be somebody who offers care and then disappears, I got tired of it. I didn't want to do it anymore.
Right.
And so I reached out to Fellonte and Latoya and I said, they reached out to me and said, there is so much violence happening in the community right now. Like there is just so much happening. And I said, what do you think if we try to do this thing together and address that violence in a central way, hopefully in a method of participatory action where the people doing the work are from the community so that we can engage community members, we can work on building community, we can pay community members to interrupt the wealth gap and train them in healing themselves and then contributing to others so that we can use our shields against racism, which are positive identity and advocacy. And Fellonte and Latoya were up for it and we started.
When was In the Streets founded?
Officially, like January, but we've been doing this work for 2.5 years.
Okay.
But we were not in any official capacity as a nonprofit until January.
Obviously, this topic is huge, and it feels crazy to have such a short time limit on this. But what you were saying about Fellonte and Latoya, who unfortunately isn't here, but not only did you, Fellonte, have this leadership ability and this presence to do the work, but you had the lived experience, and that combination is so crucial. Excuse me. What is the mission of In the Streets? Fellonte, why don't you take this one?
The mission of In the Streets is to disrupt generational trauma in the Black community of Columbia Heights, which is the community that me and Latoya, I guess, basically grew up in.
Okay. Now, are we talking exclusively African-American Black individuals or mixed race? What are we talking about here?
Immediately, we're speaking about the Black community in Columbia Heights. Eventually, we'll make the connections because there are other nonprofits that specialize in the Hispanic population in that area, and other cultures in that area, and we'll make our connections with them to be able to help facilitate all the races in that population at a point. But currently, and it's not, we're not limited to, because we definitely work with some folks of other descent, but our mission, what we generated was to disrupt generational trauma in the Black community.
Okay, so disrupt generational trauma. So how do you do that? Let me ask you that loaded question. How that's your mission. How do you what are some of the ways you address that or try to tackle that?
So Fellonte and I are here. Latoya is our co-founder. There are two other people who we work with, who are Erin Young and Asrat Degaga. And the way I see it is like the five of us together are like the trauma therapist. Like trauma therapy is kind of often an individual endeavor, not always, but often. And the people who we work with often work with all five of us. And so Asrat is a yoga instructor who does body trauma work. Latoya is like the mayor. She knows everyone. She is the person who, hey ma, everywhere when you walk with her in the neighborhood. And she is someone who does a lot of community outreach and networking with other nonprofits. Erin researches history, kind of brings that to the front. Fellonte has a lived experience, goes and scoops people up and brings them in. And then I have the mental health experience. And so we address the mental health, the body trauma, the peer support, the community engagement, and infused throughout that is the lived experience piece of it. And that you can't do this work, I don't think, without that in this community. And consultation in our field is so limited. The idea that you can consult with someone once or twice to understand lived experience is not right.
Fellonte, so do people come to knock on the door and say, hi, I want help? How does it work?
Yeah, it's actually a process, cultivating minds, like making people open to things that they're not super open to. Definitely it's a process. The biggest part is trust, a lot of folks in my community, and I think that's why me and Latoya were perfect for it, because a lot of people trust us. So like, and one thing that I always say, and I make a joke out of it, but it's like really serious. Like I'd say, disregard your apprehension and trust me. Like trust what I'm. And, you might not know therapy. That sounds like super, apprehensive. I may not. But but also trust that I'm trying to do something right. And so it takes an element of that, but then everyone, isn't in that, that graces with me. So then it takes, further conversation, kind of getting the history, understanding the history and like why this makes sense. And then, when I bring them to the office, that we're all on the same page once we approach that person. And we give them the service that they need, and they leave feeling good, and makes them want to come back again. So it's a process, though.
Well, I'm sure you both know that it's you can work with one person, but it's their whole system. It's a whole family. How do you folks do that work? Do you have group classes, individual work? What is it specifically? What kind of treatment do you offer there?
Okay, so you go.
You go ahead.
Basically, well, in the beginning, basically, we had a group of guys that I work with, and I met with, kind of daily almost. We lost a lot of folks, and that's just kind of the group that we kind of centralized around, and we added other people later. But basically, the services we offer are, the physical health. So we do the restorative yoga, we do yoga classes, we do, basically physical training. And then we also have this, I'm drawing a blank, services. Give me that, Sangeeta.
Therapeutic mentorship.
The mentorship part of it. They have the mentorship part of it. So then we work on their casework. Some people comes with different situations. Like one guy had like a hardship issue with this university. He failed all his classes. We took him through the process of appeal process and getting them back in school, and then other different casework situations that we work with them on. So that's one part. So it's basically the physical health, the casework, and then lastly, we do the mental health part of it, where that's when Sangeeta steps in, and she has sessions with them, kind of breaking down and processing some of their emotions and some of the different traumas that they're dealing with day by day. And so those are kind of the three aspects: the physical health, the casework, and then the mental health side of it.
but it's not therapy because let's say the young man we're talking about, we were like, well, his mom needs support. So we see his mom too. Or somebody brings in their girlfriend or somebody brings in their cousin, and we just will work with everybody. And it's fine if the whole family constellation is involved in some way. And so it's not conventional therapy in that sense, because you can talk to somebody else and say, hey, I haven't seen him. Say, okay.
Right.
And say, can you get him to come in? and so if it's a culturally sanctioned issue of violence, which is what this violence is, the idea of treating it individually is something that we're trying to confront through in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
It's culturally sanctioned, so there has to be a more culturally based remedy.
You know, Fellonte, I think you were talking about trust is huge, and I would think just the simple fact that some of your people you work with feeling that there are people like you who care about them, that must be just huge. Just that knowing that someone cares about you or is interested is huge.
Yeah. What I've realized is, like, when you have that trust in like someone, and it's rare in our community where, like, we have situations where folks have issues with even their parents, like can't even trust their parents, and different things like that. When they have someone that they can trust, they have like the capacity to do more things with their life and be happier individuals. I hold that at the front foremost of like all their interactions that I have, making sure that I keep things concealed between me and the person, and having their back when they feel strongly about a situation. But yes, trust is definitely like the biggest part of it.
Let me just reintroduce you here. I'm speaking with Dr. Sangeeta Prasad and Fellonte Misher, two of the co-founders of In the Streets. So is In the Streets where is it specifically in Washington? Is it in DC?
Yep.
Okay.
Washington.
And is it a nonprofit?
Yes.
It is.
It is a nonprofit. Okay. Let me ask you something, Fellonte. I'm going to start with you. When you in this work that you're doing, founding this organization, what continues to inspire you, or who do you look to that inspires you in this whole journey that you're on?
Definitely the people around me, in the sense of like, I don't see myself separate from the folks that we work with. So like, as I build my capacity and I build, my learning and my growth and my happiness through this work, and, relieving some of my traumas, seeing that in other folks is what definitely motivates me. Seeing those guys come from, at one point where getting a job and going to college and, just going through the aspect of life to make them happy wasn't an option. Like, I'd rather just sit here and just like wait till, my day comes, and come from that to, wanting more and going to obtain more. And those are some of the things that definitely motivate me.
Awesome. Thank you. How about you, Sangeeta?
Yeah, I think I worked in India a long time ago now in domestic violence, which is also culturally sanctioned violence. And I think it really shifted the way I see the work that we do. And I often think about the women I worked with there, who also were community members, who were the most well-equipped to address that violence. And in the young people who we work with, I am so often reminded of that experience. And like today, I had somebody who came in for a session and then said, I'd really like to volunteer with you guys in what you're doing. And things like that, where community engagement, the look when you say, I see something in you and it's real, and it doesn't matter that society tells you that it's not there. And it's okay that you're really pissed off, because you have a lot of good reasons to be really pissed off, but that's still in you. Yeah. I think every day we get to learn from those experiences, and value people in the way that they deserve to be valued.
Can you share, both of you together, can you share an example of someone you worked with, either recently after you founded In the Streets, or in one of the earlier workshops you were doing? And obviously, I'm not asking you to name names or anything, but can you share an example of someone you worked with and what their experience was?
For sure. What one person that we definitely, I don't mind sharing this, Aaron, and we mentioned him already. He's actually a employee now In the Streets, and he's working with us, and and great things are happening. But at one point where he started at was, he definitely didn't know, where he was going in life, and where he really wanted to go, and never really took the time to break down some of the traumas that he was holding on to. And so he came from, doing things that and involving himself in things that he honestly didn't want to be involved in. And we took him through the program. So first he started with Ashrat with the yoga, and him and Ashrat has developed a good relationship to now him wanting to become a yoga therapist himself, while, also, learning more about this work that we're doing.
What brought him initially to the program?
Oh, so Aaron actually is one of my roommates from college. He's a roommate from college. He was a year younger than me. So I came back to DC. I came back a few years before him. He graduated a year after me, but stayed, and we went to Old Dominion University. So in that Hamptons Road area, he stayed there for a few more years after he graduated, and then came home. And I just seen what he was going through day to day. And some of the things could be so easy, because I seen the potential he had in him, and it wasn't being put to great use. And I don't think he's seen it in himself at the time. And then, incorporating him, meeting with Sangeeta, meeting with Ashra, and, him being around me just day to day, had definitely transformed his perspective on life, and his perspective on exactly what he what's his calling in life.
That's awesome.
And then we got him. He started a job. I wanted him to get some job experience before he started with In the Streets, so he got a job for about 2 months, just building things at IKEA. IKEA is he just was building things, and just kind of getting this that working mode kind of churning. And then after a few months, we were able to get the funding to hire him full time, and he was able to acquire an apartment. He was able to get his license and everything back in line. He was able to appeal process, because he got in a little issue in college, and he's able to get his degree now after completing his whole college career and then not getting a degree. So we did that appeal process, and he's getting his degree now. And just things are unfolding for him over time. That
must feel amazing.
For sure.
For you. I feel good listening to you share that story.
Yeah.
Come on, you guys. This is awesome. I mean, this is what it's about. Let me ask you this. We're kind of winding down here, but what are some of the challenges that you both face doing this? Because I'm imagining there's a slew of them.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge psychically is internalized oppression. I think people start progressing, and they've been told for so long that they shouldn't end up anyplace good, given our history, this long history of racism in this country. And I think people at times become their worst enemy when they're growing because of all that messaging. And I think a learning process that we're trying to figure out is how to make space for all of the emotional life of everybody who we work with. And we know sometimes we do really well by that, and sometimes you're like, oh, I maybe didn't make enough space for that. And I think rage is a really important emotion, one that is not paid enough mind to and not given enough space. And I know sometimes maybe I'm still working to learn how to make enough space for, righteous anger that will inevitably end up in places at times that doesn't serve a person because it ends up attacking themselves. I see that as the biggest struggle.
How about for you, Fellonte? What are some challenges you face doing this work?
It's similar to what Sangeeta said, like the internalized oppression piece, people not feeling, that they're worthy of help, especially day to day, honestly, it's just like they don't think that they are able to get the help, that they don't want the help, and things like that. And, understanding that if we all work together and we could all build each other up at the same time, but, you're told day to day and every day, like, you don't deserve. And so when it's actually here, you're a little more, they're a little apprehensive to the fact of like, should I really trust this help that you're offering, or is it some other kind of ordeal that you're trying to pull on me, that has been pulled on me, day to day from my lived experience.
Yeah. Well, look, I want to thank both of you for coming on here. And like I said, my podcast is about getting people like you on here because it's so friggin' inspiring, the work you're doing. Sincerely, it's awesome. The fact that you started out working where you did, and then you came together and you're like, let's do this, and you're doing it. It's awesome. So I really want to thank you for coming on here.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. So before you go, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Sangeeta, why don't you go first, and Fellonte?
Yeah, people can visit our website, www.inthestreets.org, and contact us there. That's probably the best way. We're all open to learning from others doing similar work. And our hope is that we continue to do this work and can hire more from within the community to interrupt generational trauma and to be able to be longstanding and to treat families across generations. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yep. Well, and we also have a Instagram profile, so you can definitely reach us at in the streets _ on IG. And
I'm gonna get you right there right now. In the streets
_ with an underscore at the end.
Okay.
And that way you can kind of as we go through and do some of our programming and do some of our things, we'll have lives, we'll have Instagram stories coming up soon, and some other posts just to kind of keep up with we're doing in the streets.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, look, I'd love to have you both back. I'd love to continue to hear about the work you're doing and do what I can to support the work you're doing. So I'm really excited to get this out there, and thank you again. Great meeting you both.
Thank you so much.
Anytime.
All right. Thank you so much for listening and supporting this podcast. And if you'd like to join the hundreds of other therapists who are each month keeping up to date and informed and inspired about what's going on in the world of trauma, I'd love to invite you to head on over to the Trauma Therapist newsletter. That's the traumatherapistnewsletter.com.